I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximize Living. There are over 70 million Americans with arthritis, and there are over 100 different types of arthritis. What you eat, how you exercise, how you manage your weight, and how you take care of your structure and nervous system all can influence arthritis. Join co-host Stacy Hansen and myself on Maximize Living as we cover arthritis, coming up next.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking about how you can overcome arthritis today. So let's just start with the basics. What is arthritis?
Well, arthro is a Greek word that means joint, and itis means inflammation, so it's inflammation of a joint. There's typically a decreased joint space. There's degeneration as cartilage in the joint degenerates, and there's usually lipping and spurring of the bone. And so there's decreased joint space and lipping and spurring of a bone. And it's characterized by limited range of motion, pain, some swelling, ache, and it causes a lot of issues for people.
I wonder how common this is, because I feel like I hear a lot about it.
Yeah, well, 1 in 3 adults have arthritis. And
Wow.
you think it's just for older people, but it isn't. There are 100 different kinds of arthritis. 100 different kinds.
Wow.
And some of the main ones are osteoarthritis, which about 25 million Americans have. Again, 1 in 3 adults have some form of arthritis. Then there's rheumatoid arthritis, where your body attacks its own joints, which is a difficult situation for sure. And there's even juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, so kids can get arthritis too.
Oh, I did not
There's
know
about
that.
300,000 cases of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis that are existing. And so women get arthritis a little more than men, about 4 to 3. But with rheumatoid arthritis, women have it 3 to 1 over men.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so there's 100 different types. There's one called ankylosing spondylitis, where the spine actually fuses and gets a bamboo ligamentous attachment all the way down along the spine. There's scleroderma affecting the skin. There's lupus. So the 100 different types, but we're going to concentrate on the main ones today.
What are some of the areas of the body that are affected by this? Because, you know, hands you hear about.
Yeah.
But can it happen all over the body?
It really can. Primarily osteoarthritis will affect the weight-bearing joints. So that would be the neck, the spine, the feet, not as much the feet, but the knees are very prevalent, and the hips are really common. Now with the hands, the osteoarthritis can affect in the hands, and typically they'll cause large nodules in the middle knuckle, the pips, proximal interphalangeal joint, just for fun, and the dips, distal interphalangeal joints, just for fun.
Pips and the dips.
Yeah, but that's where those arthritis will get, and there's a little bit more of a genetic connection with that, with the hand osteoarthritis.
So what's then the difference between osteoarthritis and then the rheumatoid arthritis?
In rheumatoid, you're going to get a synovial fluid, the joint lining inflammation, and it tends to be more systemic. It'll affect many organs, and they'll be affecting more of the knuckles and the wrists, and so you see quite huge deformities of the hand with rheumatoid arthritis, but it can affect and will affect the whole body, and typically someone will have morning stiffness and pain and ache that lasts a lot longer.
Is this genetic? Like if your parents or grandparents have it, are you more likely to get it yourself?
Well, yes and no. There's about a 5% genetic effect, and in wellness we talk about not opening your gene pool by stressing your body. Many geneticists feel if you live healthy, you don't express and open that gene pool, the weaknesses you have. So by living well, you don't cause genetic deficiencies to express themselves as much.
I like that. I think that's really empowering to know that you have some control over what seems to be uncontrollable.
Because much what we see in our healthcare system is not empowering. This is all genetics, and you can't do anything about it. And it's just not that way. There's much more understanding now that what you do in your lifestyle, what you eat, how you move, how you take care of yourself, makes a difference as to whether you express your genetic weaknesses.
And that's a very hopeful message. Well, stay with us. We have more on arthritis right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking about overcoming arthritis today. Now, Dr. Pat, I wanted to follow up. You had mentioned something about kids getting arthritis sometimes, and I wondered if that's something then that they're going to have to live with for the rest of their life, or can they overcome it?
Well, you can manage it pretty well. You may have the tendency, the rheumatoid factor in your bloodstream, but that doesn't mean you have to express the disease fully the same way. So it also is somewhat intermittent. It can come and go. So what we find, though, is that chiropractic care across the board in the studies has been very helpful with not only juveniles but adults as well to help manage the condition.
And you've had some success stories, too.
Oh, yes. A little girl, 12 years old, comes to mind that had severe headaches and neck pain and back pain and couldn't sleep more than an hour or two a night.
Oh.
And found significant pressure in her nervous system. And through adjustments, she was able to sleep through the night, reduce her headaches, her back pain reduced, and she was able to reduce off her medications as well.
Oh, that's a great story, too. And that's got to be great for you, too. I mean, that's got to just make your job so rewarding.
It's never boring being a chiropractor, and it's so fulfilling to make a difference, especially naturally, and really so much less expensive.
And can you show us some examples of what arthritis looks like? You've got some lovely models here.
Yes, we affectionately call this our sushi tray.
You know, it looks suspiciously like sushi. I don't know if I can eat it again, actually, Dr. Pat.
You know, you might want a different type of sushi.
Yeah, for sure.
Sushi will never be the same.
No.
So on our sushi tray, this really helps describe the phases of degeneration in the spine. The first one here shows a thicker disc space, and there's no spurring, and that's a healthy joint with a good space in between the bones. And not every joint has a disc, but the spine obviously does. The first phase of degeneration will happen from lots of reasons: inactivity, impacts, injuries, poor alignment will cause the disc to start to degenerate. So you'll see that thinner disc space here. And that can vertically then compress the nerve and start causing issues. Now, phase 2 of spinal decay is when we start getting more disc degeneration, but also lipping and spurring. As you look closely there, you see the spurs happening on the spine.
Yeah.
That's from abnormal loading and pressure causing irritation, and it'll draw calcium to the area and start spurring.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Phase 3 of spinal decay is much worse, and that's really, there's not a lot that can be done here except try to give some relief. Now the challenge is when the spine is out of alignment, you really go down this scale much faster.
Oh no, really?
So if I'm going to ask you a car question.
Okay.
If you took 100 cars and misaligned their wheels, how many would have abnormal tire wear?
I would think all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you take 100 spines and misalign them, how many would have abnormal joint wear?
All of them.
Yeah, because the #1 cause of degeneration in the spine is really this abnormal loading. And we'll talk about other factors that cause arthritis in the spine and other areas, but loading from misalignment is the #1 reason.
So if someone's at stage 2, 3, you said this last stage here, there's not much can be done, but
Give relief.
What can you do to overcome some of these things?
Well, as a chiropractor, we can reverse it a little bit, but the key is don't go on to get off that fast track for arthritis. So our joints should last a while, and so many of us are wearing too fast. And so if we can just balance and get some good nutrition, exercise, and other things going on in there, we can slow that down and perhaps get a little bit of reversal.
So you talked about exercise, nutrition. Can weight loss help?
Oh yes.
Get some of the pressure off?
That is one of the primary reasons people have arthritis in their knees, in their hips, in their spine, is because of excessive weight. So one study showed that if you lose as little as 11 pounds, your knees will feel as much as 50% better.
Wow.
Yeah, and I recall people who were heavy, and I would be checking their posture, and they would come in and they would have this rounded look to their upper back and mid back because they were perhaps 300 pounds. And then the people I had seen that both still at that weight, I would see that posture, but even after they've lost 80 pounds or 100 pounds, you could still see that posture from being deformed in the joints from that excessive weight for so long. Especially we're concerned about kids. Let's not get that developing spine under that much pressure.
Well, we have to go to break, but stay with us. We have more after this. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking about overcoming arthritis today. Before the break, you were talking about how you can just rapidly degenerate pretty quickly if your spine's out of alignment. And I was wondering how quick that is. Are we talking months, weeks, years?
Well, typically, Stacey, it's years, but you can have infectious arthritis. Those are concerns, but that's fairly rare. But typically, it's a wear and tear process over many years.
And you want to try to catch it before you start going down
exactly,
that
and you
line.
don't even feel it necessarily. And so the saddest case for me is to see someone who let it go, and then they come in and I have to tell them, you've degenerated these joints, they're arthritic.
Oh no.
And they're just now becoming symptomatic. So it's really important not to just go by how you feel, but get that checkup to see how you're wearing. We want to know not so much how you feel as how you heal and how you wear and tear.
So let's talk about some of the foods. I was surprised to hear that foods can affect your ability to get arthritis.
Absolutely. Some of the worst things for arthritis, sugar. Sugar drives arthritis. Red meats can drive arthritis. We've got other things, processed foods. I saw a study once that said processed foods, processed meats, deli meats, aren't fit for human consumption.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was something. Alcohol effects. So those are big deals. So the SAD diet being the standard American diet, it really drives arthritis in many ways. So we need to switch and get really healthy foods into the body. The fruits, the vegetables, the good healthy fats. You know, we talked a little bit about smoking causing arthritis. Well, people who smoke, their bone-producing cells called osteoblasts. Got to have a new word every day.
Yeah, word of the day with Dr.
They don't
Pat.
work very well. They don't work very well at producing new bone cells in a smoker because oxygen is deprived to those, and they're highly sensitive to how much oxygen they get. So if we want to have healthy bones, smoking is really fighting against that.
It's funny how we end up finding the same culprits again and again, no matter what we're talking about: smoking, alcohol, processed foods, sugar.
Overweight,
yeah.
You know, all those things affect our physiology. So one of my favorite foods, though, is, I'm not doing a commercial, but it's just green drinks. I love green drinks.
Yeah.
Now, they don't necessarily taste great, but you can spice them up a little bit if you want.
Yeah.
This one's called Suja. I got it at Costco, and about 4 times as much as a 16-ounce one for about the same price.
Nice.
So this has apple, celery, cucumber, kale, collard greens. When's the last time you had collard greens? Lemon, mint tea, spinach, and ginger in it. These things are all anti-inflammatory, all good for your body. So, you know, I would just recommend getting a couple good cups of that a day in your body. And this is what helps build and give you the good nutrition without wasting a lot of energy because it's already juiced.
Right.
So you don't waste a lot of energy in digestion.
One thing, too, I wanted to ask you is you always seem to hear about former football players, boxers getting arthritis. Is that as common as I think it is?
Yeah, one of the main causes of arthritis is also impacts. So some pros have been said being in a football game is like being in 10 car accidents in a day. Those impacts, it hurt the joint and they start to break down. They don't respond as well. They don't recover the same. They heal with scar tissue often. So there's a lot of scar tissue going on and breakdown of joints from impacts. One of those impacts often can be for the non-professional football player or boxer is car accidents. 5 years after an auto accident or a whiplash injury, there's 70% of people will show signs of arthritis in their neck.
Oh, wow.
Because of that impact starting that process. And that's why it's so important to get in to see a chiropractor, get your body balanced as soon as possible.
And get that checkup. We have to go to break, but stay tuned. We have more after this. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking about overcoming arthritis today. We talked about diet a little bit, but I wonder about supplements.
Yes, a lot of people have heard about taking glucosamine sulfate and chondroitin sulfate, and yes, those are pretty good for you. They look good, especially with moderate to severe arthritis, to get that in. Also, MSM is another product that's good for and healthy for bone. Vitamin D is, again, helpful for bone health. Vitamin E, vitamin C for collagen and connective tissue is helpful. And citrus bioflavonoids, for like grapefruit, for example, grapefruit juice and things like that. Citruses are helpful in overcoming what's called arachidonic acid. And that's something we get a lot of if we eat too much red meat. There's a lot of arachidonic acid. It tends to stiffen joints and cause inflammation in the body. But the citrus helps fight that.
Okay.
So there's some real benefits to things like grapefruit juice and orange juice that way. And of course, turmeric or curcumin is anti-inflammatory, very helpful. You just can't go wrong when you get into these natural foods that help in so many ways. Fish oils. Normally a joint will not have much omega-6 in it, the fatty acid, but after it starts to get arthritis, it gets a lot of omega-6s in there. So the idea is to reduce your omega-6s from your bad fats, your bad oils, your soybean, safflower, cottonseed oil, corn oil. Those things are thought to, if you lower those, that would be helpful with arthritis. Get more of the good, healthy omega-3 oils.
So definitely want diet, supplements. What about exercise?
Oh yes, exercise.
Always like to talk about exercise on the show.
You want to move joints. If you get too little movement, your joints, in order to stay healthy, they have to get movement. You've got to have that joint going through a full range of motion to get a pumping action in there. If it doesn't move because it's fixated or out of alignment, part of the joint surface doesn't get enough pressure to cause normal physiology, and it can pit, erode, and have arthritis. So some of the exercises for the ankles, simple ankle circles going each direction.
So I can do this in heels here. Oh yeah.
All right. And then point and flex where you go like this. It's great for the ankles. For the knees and hips, you can do your hula hoop or your air hoop.
Yeah.
Like that, each direction. That's really good for pelvic movement. Now also doing, if you're lying on your side, doing a sweep like this is really helpful for the hips, or a straight abduction like this. They'll get motion into the hips. When we're talking about the knees are hard to help because you want to do squats or leg extensions. It's so easy to hurt the knees if you have arthritis there.
Right.
But if you do nothing, there's not enough muscle support to protect your joints, and it makes arthritis worse as you get weaker. So one of the simple ones to do is a partial squat. So if you can't do a full squat coming all the way down, just do a partial squat. Just do a little bit. Start with what you can. And then gradually in a couple of weeks you'll be going lower, but keep it within your comfort zone. And of course, one of my favorites, if they're really bad knees, is a wall sit. Imagine we have a wall behind us and you're sitting
like this against
that wall, and you get to lean against it so you won't lose your balance or anything. would you hold that position? Maybe we could hold it for the rest of the show.
Let's have a
Stacey?
contest and see who
Oh,
goes
I
like
don't
this.
think I'm going to win. Let's hold the rest of the show like this, Stacey. Okay. But the other ones that are really helpful are their spinal exercises, where we're doing that seated rotations like this.
Okay, yeah, these are good for
And
so
the
many
seated
things.
side bends, and the neck extensions like this. All that getting motion in the spine. And of course, for the hands and arthritis, I'll give you the thicker one.
Oh, yeah.
For the hands and arthritis, this is a really helpful exercise.
Our
Because
resistance
we don't get
bands.
enough extension, we get a lot of flexion deformities. So with the extension exercise around your thumb and fingers, do that for a minute. Maybe we should do that while we're
Yeah.
doing the wall squat.
While we're doing that. Well, we're going to do that while you go to break right after this. We'll be back. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Thank you for watching our show on overcoming arthritis. Hopefully the things we talked about here have been useful for you. One of the most important things to manage or improving arthritis is structural and nervous system care. A body out of alignment breaks down faster. The only way to know if you have imbalance in your structure or nerve interference is to have a chiropractic checkup. It is critically important to have good posture, full range of motion, even leg length, and strong muscles to build and support healthy joints. Please call Maximize Living at 608-833-1282 for a checkup today. For Maximize Living, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen. Until next time, live well and God bless.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.